Greetings, ancestors. Welcome to another episode of The Adventures of Coyote Prophet. And this adventure may be a bit spooky. Yes, it's December. It's not October. It's not Halloween. Halloween's come and gone. But this is something that I think stays in people's consciousness 365 days a year, 24/7. Depending on where you are in the world, depending on how in tune you are with the many facets of reality. And most of us, since we're so caught up in the day-to-day, what I'm about to talk about is so buried and so deep that we have no recollection. If we have had, and I'm sure many of us have had experiences dealing with the gray aliens. Yes, I'm going to talk about one of many of my experience with multidimensional, interdimensional, extraterrestrial, multi-terrestrial beings that exist within the cornucopia of the universe. So, let me start off by stating that this story happened many years ago, and it happened under the cover of night with me laying in my bed, and my bed faced west. Our house faces east and west, the front facing west, the back facing east. My room was the closest to the west facing side of the house, and my bed with the head of the bed faced, the head of the bed was on the east side, but my foot of the bed was on the west side. And this is all important because I want to give you the visual so that the impact of the entire story is full. So, my bed was near the door, next to the door, where sometimes I would sleep with the door wide open, sometimes with it cracked. My parents' room was adjacent across from my room, and in between our room was the bathroom. And the bathroom light always stayed on. And so I remember I went to bed earlier that night. I woke up in the middle of the night, not sure what time it was, but I remember looking at the door, which I could have sworn was kind of like halfway closed, but it was wide open. And then I noticed that I started seeing shadows of big-headed creatures that had to have been at least about 3 feet tall, and little bodies moving back and forth. And I'm like, what the fuck? And of course, that wasn't my language at the time, but I'm sitting there and I'm seeing this movement going back and forth. Now my light, there was no light in my room. It was dark. The only light coming in was from the angle of the light from the bathroom. My parents' door was closed. I did not get out of the bed. I'm not sure why. I wasn't necessarily scared, but I didn't get out of the bed. And then next thing you know, I was morning and my door was halfway closed. and I was like, what happened? What was that all about? And that was sort of like my first visual memory of seeing and encountering what folks will call the gray aliens. You know, the big bubble-headed with the complete black eyes and the slit for a mouth and the little holes for the nose type creatures. Now, I've had several others, but they've morphed over the years. Another one, which happened many years later, which is more recent to today, was I was crawling on the outside of a tall building on the ledge. Don't ask me why. All that I know is that I was following this guy. It was a black guy, and he was standing and walking, but due to my level of fear, I was crawling because I was afraid that I was going to fall over. However, I felt that what I was in was a construct that wasn't real. When I would look out from the building, I would see rolling green hills and a very static sky. It just seemed like it was painted. It was just there. It wasn't really a real thing. And then when I looked forward, there was not a curve, but there was a turn. There was a sharp edge. And then there was another sharp edge that led off into the other side of the building I couldn't see. But the gentleman got off the ledge by walking into a window that was open at the very end where that edge was, the first edge. So I followed him in, and before I went in, I looked down and I felt that I was very high up, and it felt that way. But when I looked down just before I went inside, I noticed it seemed like if I just put my foot out there, I'd be kicking the dirt that I see on the ground. It was like, okay, so my fear is overcoming the reality of what is. But once I went into the window, I was standing up, and there was parts of the room that were dark. And in my left side, out of the corner of my left eye, I saw the gentleman standing up in what looked like a library, a room full of books. And there was a table there, or bed, I'm not sure which one. And there was a being that would be considered like a gray being in terms of the height. They were skinny. They had a larger size head, not the seriously big head like I just described previously. But they were about 3, maybe 4 feet high. They were brown in color, a mustard brown in color, and they emoted so much more energy than the previous one that I mentioned, which I have another story I'll share, which kind of tells you that there are different types of beings alone that same sort of like makeup. But the gentleman never opened his mouth, but he spoke to me, as did the being that was laying on the table. He told me that he brought me in there because I was the only one that could heal this being. And this being slowly turned his head towards me, had the same black eyes, but was very compassionate. There was a level of depth that I felt from this being that I have never experienced from beings similar to him. And I was confused because I'm like, what the hell? How can I heal him? I don't know anything. And this gentleman who was very dark-skinned, very handsome as well, and wearing, I believe, a plaid shirt. It was sort of like an off-white, red striped plaid shirt, if I remember correctly, and jeans. Aliens wear jeans. I said something to him, and he said something back, which I don't remember telepathically, but I then just sort of like resigned to do what they, requested for me to do. And next thing you know, I don't remember what happened afterwards, but I woke up from that experience. And that was really, really interesting. The other one that I would share is, I'm not sure how this began. I think I was trying to sleep or going to bed, and then I start feeling a buzzing sensation over my entire body. It was like bzz, 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 and I was paralyzed. I couldn't move any part of my body. And the next thing you know, I saw these gray beings, like the previous ones, the first ones I mentioned, the big eyes, gray skin, big heads, and, little bodies. And they were looking over me like I was on a table or something, and they were pissed because apparently I did something or I didn't do something and they were just not happy about it. But I realized that I could not move my body, but I fucked them up by doing stuff through my mind. So I guess they were trying to do stuff to me, because I remember there was like these bright lights that were shining in my eyes, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And then every time they tried to do something, I guess I did something counter to what they were trying to do to me, and that just made them so angry. I felt like they threw me out of their spaceship or wherever they had me because they could not do anything they wanted to. And I kind of gave them the middle finger. I don't know if it was a literal middle finger, but I felt that I gave them the middle finger somehow. And I remember seeing one of them looking over like a platform or something, looking at me like, bitch, you better not come your ass here no more. But that was one of, a few experiences that I've had with the gray aliens. There's another story that I'll share at another time that was similar, but a little bit more detailed and did not have those type of gray aliens. But boy, it had a whole plethora of aliens, and they were different shapes and sizes, and that was quite an experience. But that one happened in New York City. So that'll be part of The Adventures of New York City series. So definitely stay tuned, be listening. And what do you think? Have you had experiences with any interdimensional, extraterrestrial, outerworldly beings or beings from the multiverse? Does this scare you? Do you think that this is bullshit? Leave your comments. Let me know if you're watching by YouTube. Leave your comments here. If you're listening on any of the other platforms, you can always DM me on Instagram at Adventures of Coyote Prophet. But until then, remember, it's better to travel.